Welcome to Beyond the Focus, the podcast where clarity meets confidence. At McIntosh and Associates, we believe retirement is about more than numbers. It's about living the life you've worked so hard for. Through real stories, expert insight, and practical tips, we're here to guide you in your journey towards financial clarity and freedom.
I'm Mark Elliott. Glad you are with us. Mindy McIntosh is the founder, CEO, licensed insurance professional. Nolan McIntosh is here as well. Nolan, an investment advisor representative with the team at McIntosh and Associates. All right, Mindy and Nolan, glad you're with us today. Always a fun conversation. We talk retirement. And today we're going to get into, in the next couple segments, we're going to talk about long-term care. And boy, that's a big topic, and hopefully you don't need it, but boy, if you need it, you don't have coverage, it could be a challenge. So Mindy and Nolan will talk about that in our next segment, but we're going to talk about, right out of the gate, there's a report that shows that many Americans are not ready for retirement. And we're going to dig into why that is. Now, certainly there's the financial side, there's the emotional side of it. There's a couple different sides of this, but when you hear this from this analysis, Mindy, from the U.S. Census data from the National Institute on Retirement Security, it says this: many Americans have saved less than 25% of recommended retirement benchmarks. Average worker age 45 to 54 in their peak earning years has only achieved 16% of their savings target. And we know Fidelity always says if you can get to 8 times your annual income by age 60, you're right on track. Well, nobody's really close to that. Total net worth, including assets like homes, is higher, but that still falls short of suggested targets. So it'd be great to have 8 times our salary saved by the time we're 60, I suppose. And there are certainly people that have done that, but most of us have not. So, Mindy, your thoughts on those numbers that less than 25% of people are hitting their benchmarks?
Well, I think some of it is, the lack of having an actual plan early on. And so we talk about this a lot of times, even with day to day living. What's our plan for the day? Even, you think about folks listening that have, children or grandchildren. We might talk day to day of who has what event going on, who are we supporting later, what time is pickup. It should be no different in when you're saving for retirement. I think it's too easy for people to think about, well, not today, we can do this later. That's not going to be something that I want to do right now. And it is easy to keep kind of passing the puck day by day. And then all of a sudden time just creeps up on you. So I think it's the lack of having education in the area of knowing what should we be doing today to help, really supercharge and make some event and big changes to our retirement timeline in the future. And so we're just, folks just aren't prepared or ready because sometimes it's, what type of funds do we invest in? What percentage should we be doing? How can we afford to do this? What, allocation mixtures do we even pick? So some of it is that, and some of it's just as times change, we see cost of living change, inflation, what we're seeing happening around the world. So it's ever changing. And I think that having that plan, taking a look at what could we be doing currently, what have we already done, and how do we make these instrumental changes moving forward in tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, depending on what your timeline is. And so we see it every day with numerous folks that connect with our office of a sizable change of who have we had time to work with and having a nice plan and development and walking through that versus folks that just really aren't ready or they feel like, gosh, I should be have more saved or more appropriately ready, and they're just not.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we know that the number one fear amongst retirees is the fear of outliving their money before running out of life. They don't have a plan. They're not sure where they are. That's why they're unclear. So that's your opportunity to sit down with Mindy and Nolan, the team at McIntosh and Associates, have a conversation. There's no cost to you. I think it's one of the more important questions or opportunities you'll ever have to talk with the team at McIntosh and Associates and just get some clarity into your situation. Then there's no doubt in your mind. You know where you are. You've done enough. You haven't done enough. Hey, we could tweak this, tweak that. Now you're good. We don't know until you reach out. 989-656-8885. And Nolan, Mindy talked about the worldwide craziness that's going on. We've got bombing over in Iran, then they're bombing all over the place, the Middle East. Still have Russia, Ukraine that's there. Nobody talks about it right now. So there's a lot going on. A few weeks ago, you and Mindy were on a little company trip, and you're flying into Puerto Vallarta, and they say, whoops, you better turn that plane around. Cartel have taken over. So there's a lot of things outside of our control. Do you ever have to talk to your people at your clients at McIntosh Associates that get a little freaked out by worldwide events. I'm going all to cash because the world is ending.
Yeah. Interesting for us, we try and get ahead of the media a little bit. And, granted, I'm not saying it's not scary when we kind of turn on the news and see headlines and things of that nature. But, we're pretty over communicative when we have events like this going on because we don't want to make decisions based on emotion. And because of the emotion at that moment in time is scary, it makes you want to do some things that you wouldn't normally do. But also, I think more people that the who when we work with our clients, what we do is we set a strategy so that way we have things that are not affected by the market, and then obviously things that are affected by the market. And if there are some things that are going up and down, and they want to be a little bit more conservative, then we can do that. But we're pretty communicative at this point. Talking to our clients, also getting videos out there to kind of get ahead of the headlines. And so, what's nice is if we have a plan in place, if we had everything in the market that goes up and down, and let's say we're a little more risk than what we want to be, then it gets a little more scary because you're going to see a lot more volatility in your accounts. Where if we have kind of a different approach where we have some of this money off to the side that's gonna not have the market fluctuations on it, and the stuff that is in the market we have a little bit more conservative, you feel a little bit more uh, if you lack a better term, control there when everything else is out of control in the world. So, we say we can only control what we can control. We can't control what's going to happen outside of that. But if there's an emotional response to what's happening, then we probably should look at allocation mixtures and see if there's some changes that we should be making. But we again don't know. I mean, if we look at particularly geopolitical events across the world. Anytime we've had that in the past, yes, there's volatility short term, but long term, we still usually have growth after. If you look at historicals, now obviously we never can say past results guarantee future results, but it's one of those things that if we do look at historicals, then we would say that yes, this is a snapshot in time. Not that it's that we want to just kind of be blind to it, but how do we walk ourselves through this scary situation. It allows us to make better decisions based on what that is. And so it's just going to help from the standpoint of giving our priorities. It helps set up our goals into more manageable steps when we look at the plan. And it's just going to get a lot more clarity, especially if there's anything that's happening around the world. So, yep, if you're listening and you're saying, "Man, I just don't understand what's going on. I'm scared. I don't know what to do." That's why we do what we do, is so that way we can help. This is, what our firm does. We eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff. We love to do this stuff for our clients, and so therefore, if it's scary for you and you're doing it on your own, then let us be in your corner and help, navigate through these scary times.
Yeah, and
And to
again, that
take a big breath,
Yeah,
right,
well,
Mark?
yeah.
To take a deep breath, because even as Nolan's talking about how it pertains to the world of, finance and market trends and yes, inflation and all these timely world events, we understand what it's like to feel nervous. I mean, I kind of felt my heart up in my chest, and I was um, praying to God and very happy in the flight that we were on heading to Puerto Vallarta that with the cartels and such, we made a detour, and in your planning, things do need to alter and change. But I think that we all took a deep breath. We were thankful for hearing the pilot come on and telling us that we're, making a change. And much like we're making changes for our client families and neighbors, as things continue to change and that are relative, we realize what it's like to be reassured from someone who knows more about that situation or category. And boy, I tell you what, I didn't see that coming.
No, no. And that's really at the end of the day, planning, because at the end of the day, people either have enough or they don't have enough to retire right now, right? Either you're good or you're not good. But even the ones that are good still need a plan, and the ones that are good certainly need a plan to try to get to be able to that point to be able to retire. So once we've saved enough doesn't mean that we don't need a plan anymore. It might even be more important. Maybe it's about taxes then. But either way, people need a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you kind of talked about it real quick there on the taxes. I mean, we're putting a lot of faith that the government doesn't change taxes. Just because they passed something last year doesn't mean that it's going to stay into perpetuity. So,
Nolan, those rates and brackets are permanent if you don't did you forget?
no,
Oh,
yeah,
pencil, it's in
pencil. It's all in
pencil.
pencil. So we're putting a lot of faith, legislative risk there. that they don't change our taxes. So if we have a lot of tax deferred accounts, then that could be just as dangerous as leaving everything in the market. So if there's some things that we don't know, again, we can only control what we control. We can't control if government changes taxes in the future, but we can control how we, can possibly do some tax planning today in case they do in the future. So, yes, markets are scary. They go up and down and do some cyclical things, even when there's geopolitical risk. But I would also say that taxes should be also be scary, and that's a story that a lot of people don't talk about. Is what happens if they do change taxes, or what happens if somebody passes away? Now they're a single filer, and their tax rates go up now because of all these tax deferred accounts that they have to draw from.
A lot going on at McIntosh and Associates. They're certainly here to help you figure out where you are on that road to retirement. Can you retire? Do you have enough? Are you going to be okay? All those kind of questions. Clients, sometimes prospective clients, are just trying to educate the community on certain areas of retirement planning. One of the things you just did recently was about long-term care. And long-term care, I think if you've been had a family member or somebody that needed it, you kind of understand the importance of it. And if you haven't, you probably don't even really let it enter your mind. My mom went into a retirement community probably 5, 6 years ago, and her apartment was like 2 grand a month. Then she got put into the assisted living side of things, and that bill went from like 2,000 to 8,500. I mean, it's a totally different ballgame. Long-term care, I suppose the assisted living would fall into that category, but long-term care, what are we talking about? How do you explain it to people? And boy, this is a big part of, I guess, a lot of people's lives, isn't it?
It's such a huge part. Anytime that we do events or educational series, or even sitting in with client families, they talk a lot about caring for an aging parent, or what happens if they need some long term care in the future. They don't have coverage or protection for it. Does Medicare cover it? So a lot of it comes initially with kind of some of their worries or fears, and then kind of a Q and A on that. But we talk a lot about, really starting with the long-term care. Most folks prior to their, I'm going to say early 50s, it's not even a thought that they have, other than maybe seeing a grandparent or a loved one being cared for. And really the truth of it is most of us might feel strong and resilient as we're younger. But as we age, we want to become prepared and have independence. And until, one day we don't want all of a sudden life just becomes hard and it hits us in the face. We want to be more like Rocky. It's about those later rounds. Actually, when you watch those boxing movies, it's the later rounds of his fights that become more and more important. And we talk about that, like long-term care can be that type of hit. And we want to make sure that folks are prepared, not only understanding the cost and the inflation and what happens if someone does need care, but also to understand what it's not. So many people still feel like, hey, my Medicare will take care of it. Or, if I need to have some sort of a spend down, like it can't be that much money, can it? So we like to talk all from facilities to cost, whether it's a full nursing home, assisted care. What are we doing, whether someone needs help in the hospital, or with that program? And then are we crisis planning, or do we want to make sure that we've worked really hard to talk emotionally with the people we're serving and financially to have it be proactive? So we continue to come back to this having a plan. And it's one of our really 5-step series in our process of our focus wealth plan, of making sure that we're understanding healthcare, looking at long term care, looking at it from a cost standpoint, and really building in that foundation. What types of coverages or planning even could we do to have protection? Because here at our firm, we really protect and help folks with long term care in really 3 different planning instances. Because on average, anyone that goes into a nursing home, statistically, you're going to stay an average of 3 to 5 years. And if you're going to a nursing home in the state of Michigan, today it's around $12,000 a month. That is extremely expensive. And we're seeing 70+% of individuals over the age of 65 need some sort of long term care. So that potential is high. This could be $500,000 of someone from either their portfolio or expenses. And healthcare inflation that we're seeing is running higher and higher than traditional. So this isn't something that's, very rare or very unlikely. It's extremely common. It's just not as common until you're 65 years plus, but we want to make sure that we are coverage and protecting that. And it's not something that Medicare is going to cover. Medicare helps to handle 100 days of skilled nursing care after a hospital stay, but it's not going to cover, private pay. We don't want you to derail your retirement. And if yourself or your spouse, or if you're single and you're the one getting sick, we want to make sure that you have protection and to have four true ways to just simplify the approach of how do we handle this if we are one that's going to utilize some long term care. So, top four ways, Mark, that we're really looking at folks to do something for an approach on long term care is one, you can really choose to do nothing. Um, and sometimes that's just from lack of education. Other times it's just when you look at really your situation, that's what you have as far as sometimes a no opportunity zone. Others buy traditional long term care insurance. So you still have to purchase it with good health. You pay a monthly premium. The plan or company then pays so much per day to, let's say, the nursing home. But we still have inflation to look at, daily cost to look at. So those prices can vary, and you do still receive increases over time. Third way is to really do a crisis plan. You can do crisis planning with an attorney through a trust. Or fourth, we can do asset based planning. We do a lot of that here. You can do so either on a life or even annuity type of platform for folks. And really, with the asset based planning, is you can actually purchase sometimes without even having to go through much of a medical screening. You don't always have to have great health to be able to purchase. Um, Really some tax efficient ways to pay and earmark some funds for long-term care in the future. So, hands down, I think it's very important to just kind of set a needs analysis. We walk through it, we take a look, because crisis planning isn't great. They do a 5 year look back, and we want to make sure that we can look at the possibly preferred method. Nolan and I both do the asset based planning. We'd like to look at that for folks, and that's the way most of our families have really looked at this from an accessibility standpoint.
Mindy touched on a lot of things there, Nolan, and one of them was, well, Medicare's not going to take care of all of this. I think a lot of people get to 65 and think, well, Medicare is going to cover a lot of this, and Medicare covers some, but it doesn't. I mean, if you actually go into a long-term care facility, I suppose then you're down to 100 days or something. Can you kind of? I mean, Medicare is a great program, I suppose, for those that are using it, but it's not a be all. It's not going to cover all this stuff, right?
It's not, and I think that's a challenge. I think a lot of people think that. I think that is a big misconception, that they're gonna pay for it. What they will pay for obviously is prescriptions and doctor visits, and any care that you need from perspective of from a medical standpoint. But if somebody's coming in and helping you bathe, or somebody's you're going to a place and they're feeding you things of that nature, Medicare will not pay for that. And so therefore, what are we going to use for our resources? And so, I think what's interesting is that a lot of people think that long-term care, it gets this big, I think, misconception, that long-term care insurance is the only way to protect ourselves. And that's the old way of doing it, but now there's so much more that's changed in the industry that, we can do things like Mindy had touched on, right? We're in that sandwich generation now, we call it, right? Where they're still, taking care of their kids, but yet now their parents they're taking care of them as well. So we're kind of in that sandwich generation right now where they could have to worry about that for their parents. And so it's one of those things that we can look at a lot of different options instead of just true long-term care, traditional insurance, to where if you don't use it, you lose it type of thing. You're just paying into this, and not that we want to have to use it type of thing, right? You never want to have to use your insurance, but if there's a way that we can help assets protect themselves pretty much, then it's a way that we can, earmark some of people's assets to help pay for some of the long-term care. Now, typically our goal is not to just pay for the entire amount, right? We got to look at all of our income sources. Is Social Security coming in? Do we have a pension? Do we have another income source out there, like maybe an annuity that's paying a monthly benefit, that might have some long-term care component in there as well, right? There's some things out there that are income annuities that would have a long-term care component component to where if you were to go on claim, then they would start doubling your income at that point to help pay for the long-term care. So there's some interesting ways we can, based on what clients' needs are and what they're wishing for, that we can look at and say, is there ways that we can get around this by using some of what you already have to protect themselves instead of going down into spend down and possibly being left with no assets if you were to go into a nursing home. So it is one of those things that is going to continue to rise. There's a reason why these facilities are popping up over the place. It's not because they're not getting filled. I mean, people are obviously going to these facilities because as we age more, right, there's more opportunity for us to be able to have to use these types of care.
We're talking about long-term care, and it's man, my mom's going through it. She's 89 years old, and she every time I pick her up, we go out to eat. She'll say, "But I should be dead by now. I don't know why I'm still alive. I should be dead," and she's running out of money. So I mean, it's a challenge. It goes fast when you have to crank out 10 grand a month for a facility compared to what you did when you were just living a normal life. So it's a whole different ballgame. And Nolan, you and Mindy talk to your clients at McIntosh Associates about asset-based planning for long-term care. The old way, back in the day, my grandparents, even my parents, if they'd have thought ahead and had long-term care, there were the old long-term care plans, but those people don't really like because, boy, if you never needed it, you just lost the money. Kind of like our car insurance and home insurance. You never use it, you lose it, basically. Don't want to do that anymore. So now you're talking about a different way of tackling this really tough situation. If you need long-term care, asset-based planning. What is it? How does it work?
Yeah, great question. I know we could touch on it a little bit last segment, but yeah, unfortunately, I mean, real life experience here, we have clients of ours that are in their 80s. They are probably not going to go to a long term care facility, but they've been paying for this long term care insurance for over 30 years. And unfortunately, their money's a little bit tight. And they asked us, well, we're probably not going to use this long term care insurance. Should we stop paying on it? And we just had to tell them, as tight as money is, you paid on this for 30 years. It wouldn't make sense at this point to turn that policy in, because what if you did need it now, and you've been paying it all these years, you just turned in a policy that you could have used, and they're like, well, it keeps going up in price. And that's the challenge you have with long-term care insurance, is that it doesn't typically stay static. Usually the premium continues to increase as you get closer to using the benefit. And then you start having, possibility of, do we reduce the benefit amount so that way we keep the payment the same, or do we, do something else? And so it's a kind of a slippery slope there. So that's why asset-based long-term care has really made a lot of headway, because what it does is not a use or lose it system. It's basically where if we can use like fixed index universal life type of policy, the goal is to try and keep, because there's a premium still right on life insurance, but the goal in that type of product is to try and keep the death benefit a little bit lower, so that way it allows the cash value to build up a little bit quicker within the policy itself, so that way it can help pay for long-term care tax free if you're to go into the nursing home. And so, or even at that point, right, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to go to nursing home, I want to stay at home. It also would do in-home care, right? That's a big push, right? There are some of these policies out there that will do assisted living or nursing home care, but if you had to have in-home care, then it won't protect the asset from that. We always want to, Mindy and I always try to look and make sure that, if it can have an in-home care component to it as well. And a lot of people are like, well, how would I qualify, if that's at base, do I have to have all these different things that happen before they'll allow me to collect on the long-term care provision within the product? And typically it's two activities of daily living out of six. Like, you can't feed yourself, bathe yourself, things of that nature. So you only have to qualify for two of those out of those six, not all six of these. So that's what's nice about it as well. It's not like it's this unreachable type of scenario where, yep, only in certain instances are you going to be able to get it. Most of the time people are going to qualify two out of six activities of daily living. And so therefore, we like to use those types of asset based to help look at things for our clients, so that way again, it gives them, and Mindy's going to probably talk about it on the emotional side of things. It gives them this plan that allows them to feel more comfortable that if something were to happen, that they have this protection to help pay for some of the care that they would need, in later in life, and you know that again we talked about, on the life insurance chassis you typically have to have, you have to qualify medically, and so sometimes people come in our doors that aren't necessarily medically qualified to do that. So then we can look at other opportunity zones through the annuity space, and therefore, if they needed a guarantee type of issue, type of product, that we can look at that. Or again, in the annuity space, like I talked about, there's some of these products out there that if they are an income type of generating annuity, they can actually put a doubler on there if you were to qualify for needing care. So if you're receiving $1,000 a month from that product, or you were supposed to be receiving, right? Let's say you're not let's say you're not using it, right? But let's say you all of a sudden go into the nursing home, whatever you would have been receiving, right? If it was like $1,000 a month, you would get $2,000 a month to help pay for the long term care. So it's really, some amazing, different things that we can look at now that we couldn't in the past. So it's just been a lot of changes that a lot of people don't realize out there, that, traditional long term care insurance is really kind of a older type of thought now. And if we can use asset based care, it really can change the trajectory and give a lot of people more comfort and confidence, in their retirement years if something were to happen.
So to learn more about that, because there are a lot of options, that's what Mindy and Nolan, they work in this day in and day out. It's an opportunity for you to go, wow, I never even heard of that one. Didn't know I could do that. I think you'll have your eyes opened a little bit about some of the options that are available in these different areas of retirement planning, whether it's income, investment, taxes, healthcare, legacy planning, Social Security, Medicare. There's a lot of decisions to be made. The idea is to get some ideas about where you are, and here's some options for you. Which one do you like the best? They're not going to tell you have to do this or have to do that. They're going to say, here's what we think is the best. But we also think this one could work for you as well. Now you make the decision. Many of the emotional side of this. My mom, when she went to the retirement community, was in pretty good health. Stayed there for probably 2, maybe 3 years at the most. Then all of a sudden, she's a diabetic, and she's a brittle diabetic, can't control it. Blood sugar goes to 800, it goes to 10. So she'll have to make a little trip. So now she's in assisted living so they can actually monitor that way closer. But she doesn't see as well. She can't drive anymore. It's just not a great opportunity for her. She's not excited about it. That's a tough part of this whole gig, I think. And is the family around, the people that are going through it? How do you see it?
I think some of the biggest parts of the emotional is making sure if you've had any of the conversations, let's say ahead of time. Um, we've had this in our household and we tease about it a little bit. It's not real funny, but we tease about it. We have 3 daughters, 3 kind of younger daughters, 11, 13, and 16. And our 13-year-old, generally speaking, is very nurturing. So we tease that, our plan later in life is that, Ava's going to take great care of us. We'll go live with her. But in all reality, I've even seen the way that that happens and affects people. My aunt helped take care of her father in law who had dementia, and he came and lived with them. She had to quit her job at the time to take care of him fully, and I still remember him trying to like open and act like he was going to walk out the windows, much like you would a sliding door. I think I was probably maybe 11 or 12 at the time. So you see all these things of how it emotionally takes a toll of you on you. Like that's my father, that's my father-in-law. Like, oh my goodness. And just having the different types of things that are troublesome. So it's not only the conversation about where are you going to be? Are you staying in your home? Are you going to assisted living? Do you want dialysis? What's important to you? What type of facility? So we need to know the type of facility, the type of care, what you might enjoy doing with some of these groups, even that play cards. They have communities together. So I think it's really important. We want to make sure that you as the consumer are deciding now so that no one else has to. That's a very heavy burden. So planning, so many people think planning is just financial. It's not. It's about protection, being compassionate, having a plan, and it's all about what seems important. Let's rationalize and kind of walk through this together. So, and we tell the people that we work with, it's not too late, right? You're not too late. Folks will say, am I too old? Did I miss the boat? Do I have to qualify? So sometimes you have to qualify, sometimes not. The key is we really want to explore your health, and try to give you some flexibility now. So the more pre planning we do, the better. And I always kind of leave this with giving you a little bit of homework, right? So we have children. I would say, takeaway from today, homework is don't panic. It's not to buy or purchase anything. It's just to answer a couple of questions. So, if something happened tomorrow, do you have a plan? Does your spouse know what you want, or someone that you're close to? And would long term care costs really disrupt your retirement plan? And should you explore the options? So these are the four things. If any of those are resounding yes, reach out to us here. So we talk about this time and time again, the timelines and how to do so. So we want to help you to make sure that we know what type of mistakes to avoid. We want to make sure that that doesn't cost you thousands of dollars in lost benefits or penalties. We'll help you there. Many people are making these decisions sometimes without realizing how complicated the rules really are. And once the choices are made, it's very hard to change them. And then what you should really know before you file for your benefits or enroll in Medicare. And, one of our team leads can even help you with that process as well. So if retirement's even a few years away, now is really the time to understand your options before we see deadlines or decisions really catch you by surprise.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to learn about Social Security and Medicare, and I'm right in that wheelhouse. I started my Medicare Part A when I hit 65, but I have insurance at work, so I don't need the Part B or D. And the always fun thing is, hey, your Social Security recipients this year got a 2.8% cost of living or 2.5% cost of living adjustment, equaled about 56 bucks, but then you gave 20 back to Medicare Premium Part B. So they are tied together.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, though, they're really important decisions because there's so many options now in Medicare, and you're kind of the Medicare wizard, Mindy. There's so many options with that, but think of the 8 years of options you have with Social Security. You need some information to make the right decision, I would think.
So much information tied into there, and we really can look at key factors of your goals, kind of your wishes. Where do you live? What's the family history? Financially, how you're set up, and many other factors. And yeah, we're happy to provide all that information, and then kind of work with you one on one directly on your goals. Thanks for joining us on Beyond the Focus. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and review the podcast. For more resources and to connect with our team, visit us at focuswealthplan.com. Until next time, stay focused and keep leading with purpose.